Welcome back to Stoic Spirit. Let's be honest, we've all been there, spending endless nights replaying conversations in our minds, questioning what went wrong, wondering if they ever think about us. Maybe it was someone you loved, maybe it was a friend you trusted, maybe it was someone who walked away without a second thought, while you were left with nothing but silence. And the question that lingers in your mind, will they ever regret losing me? Here's the reality. Yes, they will. But not because you waited, not because you begged for their attention. They'll regret losing you the moment you stop caring, the moment you shift your focus from them to yourself. Because nothing is more powerful than a man who no longer seeks validation from the past. And that's exactly what today's video is about. We're breaking down the Stoic blueprint for detachment, so you can walk away with quiet confidence and never look back. We'll reveal why people only value you when you're no longer accessible, and how to make that realization work in your favor. And most importantly, by the time they regret losing you, you'll have evolved into someone who doesn't even care anymore. So if you've ever struggled to let go, if you've ever wished for closure, if you've ever wanted to stop wasting your energy on someone who didn't deserve it, this is the video you need to watch. Stay until the end, because the final lesson will shift how you see every past relationship forever. And before we dive in, if you're ready to master your mindset and take back your power, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another video. Let's get started. Number 1. The Detachment Paradox. Why they always realize too late. Have you ever noticed how people only appreciate something once it's no longer there? That's not coincidence. That's human psychology. When you're constantly present, texting first, reaching out, making yourself available, you become predictable. And what's predictable gets taken for granted. But the moment you pull away, you become a mystery. Your absence forces them to reflect. They don't miss you because you left. They miss you because now they have to sit with the silence you once filled. Why this happens? The scarcity effect. When something is always accessible, the mind assumes it will always be there. But the second it disappears, the brain suddenly assigns it more value. It's why people regret selling something sentimental after it's gone. It's why that old song you never paid attention to suddenly feels nostalgic when it stops playing. And it's why the moment you remove yourself from someone's life, they start replaying every moment with you in their mind. But here's what makes this even more powerful. The more you pull back, the more they start to chase. Why? Because now they're experiencing something rare, something uncertain, and uncertainty triggers obsession. Example, the background noise effect. Imagine a song playing in the background every single day. You don't notice it, it blends in, but the moment it stops, silence. And in that silence, you realize something's missing. That's exactly what happens when you walk away from someone who took you for granted. At first, they don't notice, but then something feels different. Something is missing. And when they look around, searching for the familiar comfort of your presence, they realize it's gone. But by the time they realize, you've already moved forward. The power of psychological space. Here's something most people don't understand. You don't create desire by constantly reminding someone you exist. You create it by making them wonder if they lost you for good. The mind fills in the blanks. If you disappear, they start wondering, is he seeing someone else? Did I make a mistake? Why isn't he trying anymore? And that's when the shift happens. The same person who once ignored you suddenly starts craving your presence. The same person who was unsure about you now questions their own decision to leave. But here's where true power lies. By the time they realize, you no longer care. The practical takeaway: how to shift the power back to you. 1. Stop proving your worth. The more you try to show them how valuable you are, the more they assume they don't need to appreciate it. Pull back instead. 2. Don't announce your exit, just leave. If someone isn't treating you with the respect you deserve, don't explain yourself. Don't beg. The silence will speak louder than words. 3. Redirect your energy inward. Every moment spent thinking about them is a moment lost from your own growth. Make yourself the priority, not them. 4. Be the one they can't reach anymore. The more you withdraw your attention, the more they start craving it. And by the time they realize, you've already moved on. Engage with this. Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever had someone finally see your value, but only after you left? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. Number 2. The power of indifference. Why you stop caring. The moment you stop chasing, stop overthinking, and stop needing a reaction, you become untouchable. Most people waste months, even years, replaying past situations in their minds. Why did they leave? Do they regret it? Should I have done something different? But the truth? None of that matters. Because the more time you spend seeking answers, closure, or validation, the more power you give away. And the person who holds the power in any situation, the one who needs the least from it. Here's where most people go wrong. They think healing means getting an apology. It doesn't. They think moving on means proving something to the other person. It doesn't. They think indifference is about pretending not to care. It's not. Indifference isn't an act, it's a mindset. And when you truly embody it, everything changes. Why indifference shakes them the most? Let's break this down psychologically. When someone walks away, they expect a reaction. They expect you to chase. They expect to see you upset, confused, or waiting for them to return. But when you don't react, when you move forward effortlessly, that's when they start questioning everything. Example, the power of no reaction. Imagine this. She pulls away, expecting you to text. She expects you to check in, to show signs that you're still thinking about her. But instead, silence. Days pass, then weeks. Now she starts to wonder, did I mean anything to him? Why hasn't he tried to reach out? Did I make a mistake? Because here's the truth. When you stop reacting, you become a mystery. And mystery is what drives attraction and regret. People are wired to seek validation. The moment they no longer have access to yours, they start craving it. That's when the power shifts. The ultimate revenge? Not needing revenge at all. Most people think the best revenge is making someone regret losing them. But true strength isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about getting to a place where you genuinely don't care. Because the moment you realize you're better off without them, that's the moment you win. Think about it. If they come back, it's not about them. It's about whether you even care anymore. If they don't, you are already free. Either way, you win. How to master indifference in any situation. 1. Reframe your mindset. Stop seeing their absence as a loss, see it as space for something better. 2. Don't wait for closure. Closure isn't given, it's created. And you create it the moment you decide you no longer need their explanation. 3. Act as if you've already won. Not to prove a point, but because your life is moving forward with or without them. 4. Detach from the outcome. Whether they regret it or not doesn't matter. Your peace matters. Your turn. Let's talk. Who in your life do you need to stop giving your energy to? Drop a comment. I read every response. Number 3. The absence effect. Why walking away changes everything. The moment you stop proving your value, they learn through experience. You can talk for hours, try to explain your worth, or even try to make them understand what they lost, but none of that matters. Because the real lesson, it isn't in your words, it's in the silence. The moment you remove yourself, the moment you stop trying to prove your value, that's when they truly feel it. When you're always there, always available, always giving them your attention, they don't have to think about you. But the second you're gone, that's when the real reflection starts. Why absence forces reflection. Imagine a world where the sun never sets. You wouldn't appreciate daylight because it would always be there. But the moment darkness falls, you notice, you appreciate. You realize the value of what you once took for granted. The same thing happens in relationships. As long as you're present, accessible, and always trying to make them see your worth, they won't truly appreciate you. But when you leave, when they no longer have access to your time, your energy, your presence, that's when they start to notice. And once they notice, they start to question. Did I make the right choice? Why haven't they tried to reach out? Were they more valuable than I realized? Because here's the truth. The lesson isn't in what you say to them. It's in what they feel when you're no longer there. Example, the power of silence over explanation. You've probably seen this happen before. You try to explain yourself. You try to make them understand. And what do? They ignore it. They tune you out. They move on as if your words mean nothing. But what happens when you just leave? No arguments, no dramatic goodbyes, just silence. Suddenly, they're left with nothing but their own thoughts. They don't get closure. They don't get an explanation. They're forced to sit with their own choices. And that's when the realization hits them. Because absence is the only thing that makes people truly reflect. How to use the absence effect to your advantage. 1. Never argue for your worth. The more you try to prove it, the less they'll believe it. Let them figure it out on their own. 2. Don't announce your exit. Just leave. No explanations, no justifications. Let the silence say everything. 3. Let them feel the space you once filled. Absence speaks louder than any words ever could. 4. When they finally realize what they lost, you'll already be too far ahead to care. Because the truth is, the moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop explaining, the moment you just disappear, that's when they start chasing you. Your turn. Let's talk. Have you ever walked away from someone and watched them realize your value too late? Drop a comment. I read every response. Number 4. The ultimate Stoic test. Would you take them back? Here's the real test of your growth. If they came back today, would you even want them? Most people spend so much time obsessing over whether someone regrets losing them that they never stop to ask the bigger question: would I even let them back into my life? You see, when someone walks away from you, it's easy to get caught up in the idea of proving them wrong. You want them to miss you. You want them to realize your worth. But what happens when they actually do? What happens when they send that text? When they show up saying all the right things? Would you still want them, or have you outgrown the version of yourself that once needed them? Why time changes everything. A year passes. You've evolved. You've become stronger, wiser, more focused than ever. And suddenly, they reach out. But now, they don't even fit into your life anymore. The things you once tolerated, unacceptable. The validation you once craved, no longer needed. The emotions they once controlled, completely detached. And that's when you realize the real win isn't them coming back. The real win is realizing you don't want them anymore. Because here's the truth. Most people regret losing what they once had. But that doesn't mean they've changed. It doesn't mean they suddenly deserve a place in your life again. Example, the reality of moving on. Think about someone from your past, someone you once thought you couldn't live without. At one point, they were everything to you. But now, you see them for who they really are. You see how much you've grown since they left. You see how much you would have had to shrink yourself to stay in that situation. And in that moment, you realize you don't want them back. Not because you're bitter, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you've outgrown the version of yourself that once needed them. And that's when you truly win. The Stoic approach, how to handle their return. 1. Don't romanticize the past. Your mind will play tricks on you. It will remind you of the good moments while conveniently forgetting why they left in the first place. Stay grounded in reality. 2. Ask yourself, what value do they bring now? Are they returning because they've changed, or because they're just feeling lonely? Have they grown, or are they the same person expecting you to be who you used to be? 3. Protect your peace. The people who once made you doubt your worth should never have the power to do it again. If someone left you confused, doubting yourself, or feeling unworthy, why would you allow them back into your space? 4. Remember, growth means outgrowing. You don't evolve just to fit back into places that no longer serve you. Real growth means being okay with leaving certain people behind, and if they finally realize what they lost, let them. But don't ever shrink yourself just to let them back in. Your turn, let's talk. If someone from your past came back today, would you take them back, or have you outgrown them? Drop a comment. I read every response. Number 5. The art of outgrowing their memory. You don't just outgrow people, you outgrow the version of yourself that wanted them back. Most people spend so much time looking in the rearview mirror, wondering, what if? What if they come back? What if things had gone differently? What if I had done more? But here's what you need to realize. The person you were when you wanted them is not the person you are becoming. If you had stayed the same, if you had not grown, evolved, and moved forward, maybe you'd still be waiting for them. Maybe you'd still be hoping they'd come back. But the fact that you're here, learning, growing, and focusing on yourself, that alone means you're already leaving them behind. The truth about moving on. People assume moving on means waking up one day and feeling nothing. But that's not how it works. You don't just wake up and suddenly stop caring. You don't just flip a switch and erase memories. Moving on happens in stages. At first, it feels like a loss. Then it feels like a challenge. And eventually, it feels like freedom. Because with time, you stop seeing them as the one that got away. You stop seeing them as unfinished business. Instead, you start seeing them for who they really were. And more importantly, you see yourself for who you are now. Someone who deserves better. Someone who doesn't chase. Someone who no longer waits for closure. Example, the perspective shift. Think about someone from your past, a relationship, a friendship, someone you once thought you couldn't live without. Now imagine something different. Imagine that you never grew. Imagine that you never improved. Imagine that you stayed the same person you were when you wanted them back. Would you still want them now? Or would you look at them and realize you were settling for something that no longer fits the person you've become? That's the power of outgrowing. You don't just move on, you rise above. You don't just get over them, you evolve past them. The moment you know you've truly moved on. 1. Their absence doesn't feel like a loss anymore, it feels like a lesson. You stop seeing what you lost and start appreciating what you gained. 2. You no longer wish for things to be different. You accept that everything happened exactly as it needed to. 3. You don't need closure. You don't need an apology, an explanation, or one last conversation. Your closure comes from knowing that their chapter in your life has already ended. 4. You don't feel the urge to check in on them. No social media stalking, no curiosity about what they're up to. You're too busy living your own life. 5. If they came back today, you wouldn't feel excitement. You'd feel indifference. Because you know now that their presence was never essential to your growth. Why do people struggle to let go? The hardest part isn't missing them. It's missing the version of yourself that existed when they were around. When someone leaves, they take a part of your past with them. And that's why most people hold on. Not because they truly want the person back, but because they want to hold on to who they were during that time. But here's the truth. You can't move forward while clinging to an expired version of yourself. The version of you that needed them no longer exists. The version of you that waited for them is gone. And the version of you that is growing, that's the only version that matters now. What happens when you finally let go? You stop waiting for an apology that will never come. You stop replaying conversations, wondering what you could have said differently. You stop feeling like you lost something because you realize you actually gained something, yourself. When you truly let go, the past stops controlling you. And when the past no longer controls you, you start moving toward a future that actually aligns with your growth. Your turn, let's talk. Is there someone in your past that you once thought you couldn't live without, but now realize you've outgrown? Drop a comment. I read every response. And remember, you're not just moving on, you're moving up. Number 6, the shift in power when they try to return, expanded version. Here's what happens when you move on. They feel it. At first, they don't notice. They assume you'll still be there, still thinking about them, still hoping. But then, something shifts. They realize your energy is no longer on them. They notice your absence in ways they never expected. And suddenly, they start showing up again. This isn't a coincidence. It's human nature. People crave what they no longer have access to. When they sense that they've lost their hold over you, their curiosity is triggered. But here's the question most people fail to ask. Are they coming back because they've changed? Or are they coming back because they can't handle losing access to you? That's where most men get trapped, mistaking regret for real change. Why they try to come back? People don't miss you when you're still available. They miss you when they can't have you anymore. It's not about them suddenly realizing you're special. It's about them realizing they no longer have the same access to you. This is the power of absence. Absence forces reflection. When you were always there, replying instantly, giving second chances, making excuses for their behavior. They didn't have to think twice about you. But the moment you stop, the moment you remove your energy, they're left with silence. And silence makes people uncomfortable. It forces them to sit with their own decisions. Example, the sudden, "Hey, stranger" message. Let's say someone ghosted you months ago. No explanation, no closure. You moved on, focused on yourself, and stopped giving them a second thought. Then, out of nowhere, you get a "Hey, stranger" text. Or an ex who once acted like they didn't care suddenly watches all your stories, likes your posts, or finds a random excuse to contact you. It's not an accident, it's not fate, it's the energy shift. They expected you to still be thinking about them. But now, you're unreachable. And nothing is more attractive than something that feels just out of reach. They want to know, are you still affected by them? Do you still care? Do they still have a place in your life? And more importantly, are you still the same person who once tolerated their inconsistency? What their return really means. This is where most people get it wrong. When someone from your past reaches out, it doesn't mean they've changed. It doesn't mean they suddenly realize they made a mistake. It simply means they feel your absence. And that's a huge difference. People often come back not because they miss you, but because they miss the way you made them feel. They miss the validation, the attention, the comfort, the certainty. But do they miss you as a person? Or do they miss the version of you that gave them unlimited access? That's the question you have to ask yourself. The power dynamic has shifted. When they left, they assumed they had the power. They assumed you would wait. They assumed you would always care. But when you moved on, when you grew, when you became indifferent, that power shifted to you. Now you're not chasing. Now you're not waiting. Now you're too focused on your own path to even notice their return. And that's exactly why they come back. Because now you're the one they can't reach. And nothing makes a person crave something more than realizing it's no longer available to them. Practical takeaway: how to handle it. So what do you do when they return? Stay neutral. You don't need to be cold, and you don't need to be overly warm. Keep your emotions in check. Don't assume they've changed. Their regret doesn't mean they've grown. If someone took you for granted once, they might do it again. Ask yourself, does their return serve my growth? Not every old connection deserves a new chance. Remember, you don't need to prove anything. The biggest power move is not needing to react at all. If you still feel tempted to engage, ask yourself, am I responding because I actually want to, or because my ego enjoys the attention? That distinction changes everything. Why this matters. If someone truly cared, they wouldn't have needed to lose you to appreciate you. If they truly valued you, they wouldn't have made you question your worth. So when they return, it's not about them. It's about who you've become in their absence. By the time they realize what they lost, you'll be too far ahead to even care. Because when you elevate your mindset, the past starts looking smaller and smaller. Your turn. Let's talk. Has this ever happened to you? Has someone ever tried to come back after realizing your absence? Drop a comment. I'd love to hear your story. And remember, when you level up, the past will try to return. But your growth isn't meant to be reversed. Number 7. The last lesson: why you never look back. There's a reason lions don't look over their shoulders. They don't chase. They don't wait. They don't dwell on what was left behind. They move forward with confidence, knowing exactly who they are. And that's exactly how you need to carry yourself. Because the moment you start looking back, questioning, or wondering if they'll regret losing you, you lose focus on your own path. And the truth is, they will regret it. It might take weeks, it might take months. For some, it might even take years. But at some point, they'll realize they lost someone who truly cared. They lost someone who was willing to give them loyalty, effort, and value. They lost someone they can't replace. And by the time they recognize this, you'll already be so far ahead in your journey that their regret means nothing to you. Why people always regret losing someone good? It's human nature. People always think they have time. They assume you'll always be there. They assume they can come and go as they please. They assume your patience has no limit. But then something shifts. You stop waiting. You stop proving your worth. You stop being available. And in that silence, they realize They start replaying the memories. They start questioning their own choices. They start wondering, what if? Because the moment you move forward, the past loses access to you. They thought you'd always care. They thought you'd always be an option. But now, they see that you've outgrown them. And nothing haunts people more than realizing they lost someone irreplaceable. Example, the power of moving forward without looking back. Picture this. You're walking down a path, focused on your own journey. Then suddenly, someone from your past calls out to you. Do you turn around and go back? Do you pause your progress just to see if they've changed? No, because looking back slows you down. And if they truly regretted losing you, they'd have to run to catch up. Why you should never look back. They had their chance. If they didn't value you when they had you, why give them another opportunity to waste your time? You've grown past them. The version of you that wanted them back no longer exists. You've evolved. Your future is worth more than your past. Everything ahead of you is far greater than what's behind you. And here's the biggest truth of all. The people who truly belong in your life will never put you in a position where you have to question your worth. So why waste time questioning if someone who walked away will ever realize what they lost? That's not your story anymore. Practical takeaway. What to do now? Stop wondering if they'll regret it. They will. But by the time they do, it won't matter. Stop checking for signs of their return. You don't need closure. You don't need validation. You just need to keep moving. Stop making room for people who never made room for you. Your energy is too valuable to be wasted on someone who treated you as an option. Instead, put your focus where it actually matters, on you, your growth, your goals, your evolution. Because while they're busy regretting, you'll be too busy winning. Why this lesson changes everything. Let them regret it. Let them wonder. Let them realize what they lost. But never ever look back. Because the greatest success isn't in proving them wrong. It's in proving to yourself that you never needed them in the first place. Your turn, let's talk. Have you ever had someone try to come back after realizing what they lost? Drop a comment. I'd love to hear your story. Because when you stop chasing, stop waiting, and stop looking back, that's when you become truly unstoppable. Final thoughts. The power of moving forward. There comes a moment in your journey when you realize you don't need closure, you don't need an apology, you don't need to be understood. Because the second you stopped waiting for them, you won. The second you stopped needing them to realize your worth, you reclaimed your power. The second you walked away, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in quiet, unshaken confidence, you became unforgettable. And that's the truth they never saw coming. Why this shift changes everything. Stop waiting. Move forward like they were never part of your story. Stop wondering. The past no longer deserves your attention. Stop chasing. Be the one who is pursued, not the one who begs to be seen. Because the most powerful version of you is the one who doesn't look back. They will regret losing you. They will replay memories. They will wonder if they made a mistake. You see, most people don't realize what they had until it's too late. They assume they'll always have access to you. They assume you'll always be an option. Until one day, they look around and you're gone. And that's when the regret sets in. But that's their journey to face, not yours. The ultimate test. Are you ready to move on? If they knocked on your door today, would you even open it? If they suddenly apologized, would it change anything? Or have you finally realized that the greatest decision you ever made was choosing yourself over someone who made you feel replaceable? If so, you've already won. And that's the kind of victory that doesn't need an audience. What's next? Your growth doesn't stop here. Keep leveling up. Keep building a life that makes you proud. Keep focusing on who you are becoming, not on who walked away. Because the right people will never put you in a position where you have to question your worth. And the wrong ones, they'll spend their nights wondering what happened to you. Your turn. Let's talk. Which lesson hit home the most for you? Have you ever walked away and seen someone regret it? Drop a comment. I read every response. And if this video added value to your life, do these 3 things. Hit the like button. Let's spread Stoic wisdom. Subscribe for more powerful insights every week. Watch another video because your growth doesn't stop here. Thank you for watching. Your time, presence, and commitment to becoming your best self mean more than words can say. Until next time, stay strong, stay stoic, and keep moving forward.